YouTube. This is Bill McFadden. In this video, we're going to do a comparison of the Spitfire Symphonic Woodwinds and the Berlin Woodwinds by Orchestral Tools. And it turns out the Berlin Woodwinds library comes with about 7 different solo instruments. And if you want to get more of the lower instruments like bass clarinet or contrabassoon, then you need to get expansions. And they have 3 different expansions. So what we'll do in this video is just compare the basic instruments they have in the Berlin Woodwinds with the Spitfire Symphonic Woodwinds. Now, Spitfire comes with all of your piccolos, your flutes, your oboes, your English horns, your clarinets, and your bassoons, as well as the lower instruments in each of those categories. Like you get an alto flute, you get a bass flute, you get a bass clarinet, for example, and a contrabassoon. So you get more instruments initially when you buy the Berlin Symphonic Woodwinds. In order to get the same instruments, you would need to get expansions A, B, and C from the Berlin Woodwinds. So, which is a little more expensive than if you had all the expansions and the basic cost of the original library. It adds up. So we'll go ahead and start with the Spitfire piccolo flute. Now, if you'll notice, I'm playing the legato patch, which is the first patch. This is a multi, so we're comparing multis with multis. Now, the second multi is the long. Which allows you to play chords, whereas legato patch just allows you to play one note at a time. If you try and play a chord, you get. So we have the longs, and then the next articulation we have is the flutter. And then we have long harmonics. Here's a marcato patch. And here's a tenuto patch. And a staccato. And then you have your minor second trill and your major second trill. Then in the Berlin Woodwinds, we'll start out with the legato patch. And here's your sustain patch. Staccato patch. Short staccato. And here we have a measured tremolo. Or sorry, measured trills. And then here you have your minor second trill and your major second. Here's a double tongue. And here's a triple tongue. Whoops, I guess I'm not quite on it. There we go. And if you'll notice, if you click here, you have additional articulations that can be added. And this is the list you can choose from. And there's quite a few, as you can see, for the piccolo. We have measured trills +1, +3. So that's 3 semitones, so it'd be like a minor third. Let's try that one. Now the next instrument we'll go ahead and compare is we'll start with the flute from Spitfire. And we're doing legato patch. Here's the long patch. And here we have the long flutter, long harmonics. So you can see they actually pair up pretty well with the piccolo, the different articulations. Here we have the marcato. Tenuto. Staccato. And then your minor trill, minor second. And your major second. Now the Spitfire collection in general is recorded in Air Studios in London. And you have so what we're hearing is the natural reverb on from that hall. And then you have for the Berlin orchestral tools, most of their stuff is pretty much recorded in the Berlin Teldex hall. And they sort of sound somewhat similar. Now let's go down to the flute for the Berlin strings. That's your legato patch. Here are your sustains. Staccato patch. Staccato short. Portato, short. Your minor trill. Major trill, major second. And then here's a measured trill. And then you do have some other ones as well, similar to what we saw with the piccolo. more measured trills in semitones, and just regular trills without being measured. For example, let's do a trill plus 3, which would be 3 semitones or a minor. Here we have double tongues, which we saw with the piccolo for Berlin woodwinds. In order to play that, you sort of have to do a staccato technique with your fingers. And same with the double. Moving on. Now we get into the oboe, one of my favorite solo instruments. That's your legato, and then you have your longs. Actually, I was still in legato. Now, one thing I had to do was raise the overall volume level on the Spitfire because it isn't quite as, the volume level isn't as high. I actually had to raise it about 6 dBs. And in some cases, that's a little bit too much. That's why we got a little bit of distortion there. So if I bring that down, actually it's almost 8. I'll bring it down to about 6. That should sort of equalize the two. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the Berlin woodwind oboe in comparison. And here's your sustains. Staccatos. Staccato short. Portato short. Your minor second trill. Major second. And then you have additional articulations. If you click on that, once again we see lots of different measured trills, and lots of trills. And the sforzando, portato long, triple tongue, double tongue, like we saw with the flutes and the piccolos. It's like here's a double tongue. Let's do the triple tongue. And then moving along, we'll go to the next instrument they have in common with the basic version of the Berlin woodwinds. And that's your English horn. Okay, actually, we want the legato to start with. Very beautiful solo instrument. Then you have your longs. Marcatos. And your tenutos. And staccatos. And here's the English horn in the Berlin series. Legato. Switching over to Berlin for a second. Comparing them in that low register. So you see, you do definitely get a different intonation. And you can hear the difference the halls make as well. Now, we also have different mic settings. So right now we're doing the mix setting, and you also, of course, have other mic positions, which for some reason is not. So depends, I guess, which sound you prefer. Oh, I was on the wrong instrument. That's why the mics weren't doing anything. Okay. So that's the mix. It is sort of hard to see the here we go. Here's the room. here's your, see, we don't want, here's close, and that can take the room off. So you wouldn't want just close, probably, unless you were using another reverb. So there's your comparison between your English horns. So now we'll compare the clarinets. So here's legato clarinet from Spitfire. Here's your long. Let's actually do the legato here, and then we'll switch over to the so there's the Berlin clarinet legato. So here's the longs. You got your flutter and your staccato, minor seconds, trills, major second trills. And again, we have more articulations we can choose from here. A lot of measured trills, similar to the other instruments we looked at. Here's a sforzando trill. Whoops. Let's see. Yeah. And here's staccato. Staccato short, portato, minor trills, minor second trills, major second trills, double tongue, triple tongue. And so that's a comparison between the clarinets and the last instrument that they have in common, comparing the basic version of Berlin woodwinds, the foundational version really. Then they have their expansions. Is the bassoon solo. Here's the Berlin equivalent. Over to Berlin. You can definitely tell the difference in the halls. longs. And then we have the flutter. And then long harmonics. Marcato. Tenuto. Staccato. Your minor second trills. Major second. So here we have in Berlin the sustains. Staccatos. And notice again we have some articulations. There's a staccato short, so we can put that in. Here's the staccato. Portato. Minor second trill. Major. Double tongue. And triple tongue. And so that should tie up this video with the common instruments between the prelim or the foundational version of Berlin woodwinds and then the corresponding version of Spitfire's woodwinds. Now, if we take a look at the different articulations, you'll see what I mean. So this is just the Spitfire woodwinds library. You get this when you buy the library. You don't have to buy any expansions to get these. You get your piccolo flute, your flute solo, which we looked at. You also have a 2 flutes patch, but notice you get an alto flute, you get a bass flute, which we didn't have in the Berlin strings basic package. You have an oboe solo, also 2 of them, and then your English horn, which we saw, the clarinet, and you have clarinets, 2 clarinets, as well as a bass clarinet, which we didn't have in the Berlin woodwinds. And we have a contrabass clarinet, which we also didn't have in the Berlin series. And you also get a contrabassoon. And then you have an advanced tab, and you have legato techniques. There's a lot of other things in these libraries, but this is just a video comparing the heads-up instruments, the solo instruments. And as we look at the Berlin woodwinds, you see we have the piccolo flute, the flute, and we have actually 3 flutes, as well as flutes AVA, an octave above. And we have 2 oboes, and we have an English horn, and then 2 clarinets, as well as a clarinet ensemble and a couple of bassoons as well. But notice we don't have the contrabassoon, we don't have the alto flute, we don't have the bass flute, and so on. So they're set up differently, and you can get those other instruments when you get the expansions A, B, and C. You actually have to get all 3 of them in order to get all the different instruments that are available just within Spitfire. So depending what your needs are and what kind of stuff you're writing, if you just want the solo instruments, pretty well the full array of those, you can get the Spitfire library. And if you want the full array of solo instruments, you have to get the Berlin Woodwinds plus the 3 expansions. So I'll be signing off now. And if you like the video, please click like. If you want to subscribe and be updated when new videos come up comparing libraries, subscribe. And also, if you have any comments or suggestions, I would welcome those. And if you have any questions about other libraries that you might be considering purchasing, please let me know, and possibly I can do a tutorial on those. So, signing off for now. This is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music.